Welcome back to Girl Bones. I am so glad you're here. It is Thursday, the 19th of February. It is 1 p.m. at the time of this recording. So hopefully I get this up by, I'm not sure if I'll have it up by tonight, but hopefully tomorrow morning I'll have it up. I don't think I'll be able to do a YouTube video this week on my main channel because I actually have been working on a video about how the beauty standards are rooted in pedophilia, and that got quite depressing, as you can imagine. And then I started doing like a deep dive on all of the fashion houses and all of the people who own these fashion houses, and it's a doozy. It's a doozy, and it was getting kind of a little bit heavy to think about and to work on or whatever. So I'm actually not going to make that video this week. I then changed the video to be about the beauty standards and how when women gain power, like political power or power in their career or home ownership or education or whatever, like when women go further along, they usually change the beauty standard to keep women distracted and feeling ugly, and they need to lose weight, they need to gain weight, they need to get surgery, they need a little bit. Anyway, the list goes on. It's never ending. And I also wanted to include in that video a lot of the early 2000s diet culture, like in the era of calling Jessica Simpson fat for wearing those jeans, and the Nicole Richie, Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, the Olsen twins, like the anorexia era, the pro Anna era, and the magazines that used to just like body shame women for literally just being normal, and like the unbelievably horrific things that those magazines used to say, and that those like tabloidy trash magazines used to say. And I wanted to do a deep dive on that, and and the TV shows of that era as well, like the 10 Years Younger, Fat Families, America's Next Top Model, like all of these things that were just like so bad. And growing up in that era and the damage that it does to your brain, the damage that happens to your brain being a teenager or a young adult, like seeing everyone being called fat all the time, who literally just look normal, like way more thin than we were ever at the time or we would ever possibly dream of being. These people were all just considered fat, and the damage that lives in our brains now because of that, and how that era is kind of coming back in with like all the Ozempic and all the celebrities getting really thin again and all this kind of shit. So I just wanted to do like a bit of a deep dive on that, and then also like the skinny talk, the Liv Schmidt, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that's what I have been working on this week, but I need to take a week off. I'm just going to take a little bit of a week off. It's already Thursday, whatever. I'm going to be away this weekend, having a girls' weekend, down up whatever in the west of Ireland, down in up and around over in Mayo, whatever. And I think it's across, is it? Across and up a bit. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I don't care. My car will take me. I don't need to know where we're going. Just follow your maps. Follow your maps. None of my business what goes on outside of my maps. But I wanted to talk about something actually, because I think I spoke about this before earlier on in like the early days of this podcast, and I spoke about it again in my Russell Brand episode when I was talking about Russell Brand. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave it linked below. But I was talking in that video specifically about Russell Brand, and there was loads of clips that I had compiled of Russell Brand being very handsy and inappropriate with presenters, TV presenters, and like members of the audience, and blah, 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 whatever. And I said that I'm sure a lot of people would look at those clips of Russell Brand being inappropriate, touchy-feely, blah, 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 whatever, and they would say, but those people are laughing, so they're clearly okay with it. And I told a story about how around a year ago, I was in the gym, and I'll tell the story again. I was in the gym, and I was looking down, I was looking in my bag, or I was looking at my phone or something. I wasn't like looking around, and I had my head down, and I was walking like up the stairs to get into the gym. And this guy that I know from the gym was coming down the stairs as I was going up, but I didn't see him because I was looking down, but he saw me, and he grabbed me like around my neck. I'm not joking. He like literally got me in a headlock and squeezed me really, really hard. And then he planted his lips, like he obviously tried to kiss my cheek, but he kind of like got me on the corner of my mouth and on my face, like around here. And he was like squeezing me. I could like, kissing me and like keeping his face there for like wait, like first of all, don't ever do that, even if it's just for a second. But like he was squeezing me really hard, and then his lips were like, he like almost like face like it was really, it wasn't just like it wasn't just like a peck. Even if it was a peck, don't do that. But it was really forceful, and there was just no need for it whatsoever. And I told that story because I completely fawned in that situation where I was so uncomfortable. Like I got really triggered because first of all, I didn't even know who was doing this to me because I was looking down while this all happened. And then I like obviously got away and I was like, okay, it's him. And then I stood there smiling and having a conversation with him for like 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes. Like you literally just grabbed me, headlocked me, kissed me, scared me, triggered me, dysregulated me, and now I'm gonna stand here having a conversation with you as if nothing's wrong. Like what the fuck? Anyway, so super fawn. Did not stand up for myself at all, did not put up any boundaries, did not give out to him, did not push him off me. Like I didn't do anything. I literally just like melted and let it happen. And then that ruined my whole workout. Basically, like that ruined my whole workout. I wasn't able to work out properly. I was so pissed off on myself. I was so annoyed at him, but way more annoyed at myself for not standing up for myself and being like, why did I just allow all that to happen? And I didn't put up any boundaries. And it's like completely betrayed myself, completely betrayed my body, completely betrayed my like safety or whatever, completely self-abandoned. And I was so annoyed at myself. I actually was like, this is years and years and years and years of therapy, of somatic therapy, of educating myself, of enforcing boundaries and like saying no and prioritizing my safety and my body. Like I know this stuff. I am not new to this world, but still in that moment, I completely fawned and I did not want to make him uncomfortable. So in that moment, I absorbed the shame and the guilt and the discomfort that he should feel, because it's like, you're the one that made this decision. You're the one that did this to me. Not at all saying like I'm a victim. That's not what I'm saying. But I just mean in this situation, you're the one that grabbed me and like forced a kiss on me. You should be the one questioning like, why do I think it's okay to touch women in the gym like that? Why do I think it's okay to like grab people like that? It isn't. And why? And then but no, because I didn't stand up for myself and I didn't call him out, I'm the one that absorbs the shame. I'm the one that like feels shit then for the rest of the day because I didn't stand up for myself and I let myself be mauled and manhandled. And I don't want to make him uncomfortable. Like, God forbid a man feels discomfort for 10 fucking seconds. Like, I'll just take that on as my own. No problem. Just throw it on top of me there. Just add it to the pile. No problem. But anyway, so I have told that story on here, and I definitely told it on the Russell Brand episode as well, where just because I see a woman smiling and laughing doesn't mean that she's actually okay with it. Doesn't mean that she's actually like comfortable. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, that's why I told that story, because it's like I smiled and laughed after that interaction. And there's been like way worse ones. This one is like, in terms of like seriousness of offense, it's not that bad. I understand that. I'm not going to get into any more stuff that's happened, but I'm just using this one as a specific example because I've told this story before. But that ruined my whole workout. I wasn't able to work out properly. I was pissed off at myself. I was stressing out. I was like just completely dysregulated and completely triggered and angry and disappointed in myself, and again absorbing that shame. I'm not joking you, that happened about a year ago, and I still I have spoken about it so many times, not just on this podcast, but like I bring it up all the time as an example of, no matter how much fucking work you do in yourself, like I'm still a fucking fawn in these situations sometimes, not all the time. And then basically, anyway, the reason I'm telling this story is because a few days ago it happened again. And for the last year, I have been saying to myself, if that ever happens to me again, I will absolutely say something. I will absolutely stand up for myself. And I'm proud to say that I did stand up for myself this time. The same guy, same gym. I was sitting down. I was like on a shoulder press machine, and I was just like taking a break in between my sets. And I looked up, and he was like walking towards me, and he did the same thing. He like hugged me and then like planted a kiss on my cheek. But it isn't like, even if he just pecked me, I still would not be happy with that. But it isn't just a peck. It's like really squeezing me, and like really really forceful, and like really like getting your lips in there. You know what I mean? And like just like not acceptable. And I managed to stand up, knock my headphones off, and I said, "You don't need to kiss me." And that was it. "You don't need to kiss me." And he pulled away from me. He said sorry. And then we stood and had like a 30-second awkward conversation. And I just let it be awkward and I just let it be uncomfortable. But I didn't absorb that. Do you know what I mean? I was like, well, no, I did. I'll get to that in a second. But it was awkward. I'm not going to lie. It was awkward. And that was the feeling that I was trying to avoid the first time. I didn't want to make it awkward. I didn't want to make it uncomfortable. I didn't want him to feel any shame or guilt, or like, I didn't want him to feel bad. You know what I mean? So like, I was willing to absorb those feelings to preserve his emotions or his feelings or whatever. Like, God forbid a man is uncomfortable. But anyway, so this time it was uncomfortable. I did stand up for myself and it was uncomfortable and it was kind of awkward. And then immediately after, I did start to feel shame. I did start to feel guilt. I did start to feel like, oh my God, you're such a fucking bitch, Kate. You are such a fucking bitch. And I had to work with that feeling. One sec, I'll actually just get my phone, because I sent my friend, I was talking to my friend D. While this was all happening, I was sending messages to my friend D, and I sent her a big load of questions that I should ask myself. One sec. So the whole time this was happening, I was texting my friend D, and this is what I texted her. For the last year, I was annoyed at myself for not telling him to stop. And now I feel guilty because I've made him feel bad. And then I said, I have to actively work with this guilt. Why should I feel guilty for someone else's choices? Who told me that it was my fault? How is this at all my fault? Why would I feel guilty for protecting myself and standing up for myself? Who wins when women don't protect each other and protect themselves? So those were some of the questions that I just like fired off the top of my head in that moment to my friend, because I was like, why the fuck should I feel guilty about someone else's decisions? Like, because I stood up for myself and I was like, you don't need to kiss me, and I made it awkward and I made him feel some of that awkwardness, like maybe, just maybe, he will think about that and be like, why was I kissing her? Why do I think it's okay to like hug girls in the gym and like put my lips on their face, and like, why do I think that's okay? Clearly that's not okay. And hopefully he asks himself those questions instead of being like, Kate's such a fucking bitch, which is that's probably more likely that I will just be the bitch. I'll just be the villain because I'm like, please don't kiss me. What a fucking bitch. But maybe if there's any hope in the world, maybe he will try absorb some of that discomfort, because there's such thing as like healthy shame, and this doesn't really get talked about enough. This isn't the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is actually like the fawn response. And anyway, so there is such thing as healthy shame, and I think shame, like there's toxic shame where we feel guilty and we feel, well, guilt is feeling guilty about something that you've done, and shame is feeling bad about who you are. So they're not necessarily the same thing, but whatever. But like shame, feeling shame for who we are as like people is kind of pointless. Of course, that's like essentially useless, and hating ourselves and just like thinking that we're pieces of shit and blah blah. But there is such thing as like actually healthy shame when we do feel shame. Sorry, there's like a random rogue hair tickling me. There is a shame, like a healthy shame, where it's appropriate to feel shame. So say for example, if you are in a situationship with someone and you want to be in a relationship, but they only want to fuck you and they're not giving you any sort of like attention or affection or consideration whatsoever, and then you're like, well, I'm not going to fuck you anymore because you're not capable or willing or able to give me what I deserve, so I'm not going to fuck you anymore. But then you end up going over and fucking them again, and then you leave their house feeling like shit and you feel shame. That in that situation, the shame would be telling you like, you're crossing your own boundaries here, you're letting yourself down in some way, you're betraying yourself, you are abandoning your own needs in order to just be close to this person who clearly doesn't want the same things that you want. So in those situations, shame actually is a teacher, and shame actually is healthy. That's just an example. Like, that's obviously just like a stupid example, but you know what I mean? Like, not all shame is bad. So if this guy from the gym starts feeling shame because I told him, don't fucking kiss me, you don't need to kiss me, that shame for him would be healthy shame, because it would be appropriate for him to feel a little bit of like, ooh, this is making me feel icky, this is making me feel sticky, I don't really like this, and that's like shame that you can work with and be like, oh my god, no, it actually is appropriate that I feel a little bit of shame in this situation. I shouldn't be kissing girls at the gym, I shouldn't be putting my hands on people. You know, do you know what I mean? So even if I do, or even if I did make someone feel a little bit bad, God forbid, like that is shame that can be worked with. But a lot of the time when people feel any sort of shame, they just kind of run away from it. They don't like to work with it because it is really uncomfortable, and I completely understand that. So is there hope for the world? Yeah. Is this guy gonna work with that shame? Probably not. Is he just gonna think I'm a massive raging bitch, a fucking psycho feminist who doesn't like being kissed by random men at the gym? Probably, honestly, probably. But anyway, the reason that we are gathered here today is to talk about the fawn response. So first of all, I just wanted to tell that story, and I just wanted to like congratulate myself a little bit for like standing up for myself. Anyway, so hopefully that never happens again, because but anyway, even if it does happen again, in different situations, now that I've like built up that trust, it's like me trusting myself again, and me being able to be like, no, when your boundaries are crossed, when people violate you in some way, then you're going to stand up for yourself and you're going to tell them to get off you. So it's like building that self-trust back in myself after feeling the kind of fracture that I felt last year because I didn't stand up for myself. Anyway, I wanted to read out a question that someone sent in, and it kind of all relates. So before I read the question, I just wanted to say as well that I actually have been really annoying myself when I'm editing back my podcasts. I actually feel like the ADHD ping pong balliness is like out of control. Like it feels wild, honestly. And I don't even know if it's enjoyable to listen to as listeners or whatever, because maybe it's just because I annoy myself, like when I'm listening to it and when I'm talking, and then I go back and listen and I have to edit it and stuff, and I'm like, how is anyone listening to this? It's actually so fucking annoying, the way that I'm just like sprawly and spirally and just like bouncing all over the place, and it feels quite uncontained or something in a weird way, where I'm just like unrestricted and just like just flying all over the place. And I actually just think it's because I have so much to say and I want to get to the next point, and I don't, oh yeah, and then this and then this and then this, and it's like, that's great and everything, but like I actually feel like I need to rein it in a little bit, and I need to contain myself just a little. I don't want to be like robotic and like really sterile and like medicated or whatever, like obviously not, but at the same time I kind of felt like it's a little bit to listen to, and I feel like every now and then there's like nuggets of gold within all the like chaotic kind of ramblings or whatever, but I am going to try harder to prepare a little bit more, rather than just like scream into the microphone for an hour because I'm so giddy and I have so much to say. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I've done for this episode. I've prepared like a document of all the things that I want to say, and all the things that all the information that I want to give, and all the tips and tricks and somatic experiencing things that I have to say. So that way I don't feel like, oh, I'm gonna forget this, because that's why I get so because I feel like if I don't say the next thing, I'm gonna forget about it, and that's why I'm like scribbling in my notebook so I don't forget things. And it just feels a little bit like, it's fine, obviously it's fine, but I can understand why people no one has said it to me, but people love diagnosing me with ADHD, and I'm like, I know, trust me, I know. But Anyway, so for this episode, I am going to try contain myself just a little. I have like a Google document here in front of me, and it will be easier for me to not feel like I need to rush myself, or I need to like rush to the next point, or I need to try and get everything out as quick as possible, and don't forget this, and don't forget this, and don't forget this, because then it's just like it could potentially be an absolute mess for people to listen to. So with that being said, 20-minute intro, Kate, my God. With that being said, I'm going to read out the question, and then we will get into the answer that I have prepared. Okay, so as usual, if you want to send me in your question, you can email me at girlbonespodcast@gmail.com, and I will get to your question. There's a good few questions there already, and if you have sent me in a question, don't worry, I am going to answer your questions. And because it takes me so long to talk, obviously, and I want to try and do like a spitfire round where I just give like 5-minute answers, so that way I'll be able to get through some of them a little bit quicker. But for this one, just because of what happened in the gym, and just because of my unfawning, moment that happened, and then I read this one and I was like, this kind of all ties into the same thing. Okay, so as usual, I take out any sort of identifying information and stuff, so I like do remove things a little bit here and there, but anyway, the message is still the same. This person says, "Hi Kate, you're the first person who makes me feel like I'm not crazy." Well, good. You're not crazy. I don't know anything about you, but I already know you're not crazy. I'm 29 and I don't really know who I am, not in a dramatic way. But when someone asks what I want, what I think, what film to watch, there's just a blank space. I've started to wonder if there's actually a me in there, or if I've spent my whole life being a mirror for everyone else. I grew up with a mum who was emotionally unpredictable, not mean, but you just never knew what mood she was going to be in, but I knew she always loved me. From a really young age, I became the one who managed everything. I could read her before she walked into the room. I would adjust myself to be whatever she needed. Everyone said I was so mature for my age. Yeah. We know where this is going, don't we? I'm still doing it with everyone. I just ended a 4-year relationship last year because, I just ended a 4-year relationship last year and I realized I'd slowly just become him, his music, his opinions, his routines. When we broke up, I had nothing left to return to. No preferences that were mine, just this empty space where I was supposed to be. I don't know why I feel guilty when my mum is upset, even when I've done nothing wrong. I don't know why someone being displeased with me sends my body into a panic. It just feels like I've been slightly absent from my own life for as long as I can remember. Is this a nervous system thing? Because it feels like a nervous system thing. It could potentially be a nervous system thing. It could, that definitely has something to do with it for sure. It might not be the whole thing, but it definitely has something to do with it. So how I would like to respond to this is by talking about the fawn response. Now, I've already talked about it obviously earlier, talking about my experience being a fawn, and this all sounds very, very, very fawny, okay? So we're going to talk about the fawn response, and I'm going to contain myself slightly. Not fully, but like slightly a little bit, okay? So when we think of nervous system responses, usually the fawn isn't really mentioned that often because it's not one of the like initial kind of nervous system responses that people think of. Everyone thinks of fight or flight. Okay, so what happens is when fight or flight are not available, we then kind of resort to freeze or fawn. Not always. Sometimes freeze or fawn are the initial trauma responses that we go to or that we default to. But a lot of the time, it's because fight or flight are not available. So when you're a child, can you fight an adult? Can you actually fight for yourself when you're a child? No. You can't. Can you flight? Can you run away? Can you get away from the threat or the perceived threat? No, you can't, because like, where would you actually go? You're like 7 or 5 or 10. Like, where are you actually supposed to flee to? Where are you supposed to run away to? You can't. You literally can't do that. So then, because those options aren't available, then we resort to freezing and fawning. So fight can be anger. I can stop this. I can use my anger and I can protect myself. And flight can be fear. And flight, nervous system response, can be saying, I need to run away. The freeze nervous response is, I don't have those options. I can't stop this and I can't run away and I'm unable to move. And then the fawn nervous response is, if I keep them happy, then they probably won't hurt me. I'll probably keep myself safe if I can keep these people happy. So because fight and flight are responses to anger and fear, usually underneath the freeze and the fawn, there's a lot of anger and fear that are actually just like buried, because the anger and fear would have made us fight or flight, but because that wasn't available, then we just freeze or fawn. And then, but the anger is still there, the fear is still there, it just gets completely shoved away. So when we start to unfawn, we actually probably have a lot of anger and fear that we need to work with in order to like actually like unfawn. But anyway, we will get to that a little bit later. We won't talk about that yet. Look at me containing myself. Look at me reading a document. I just have like bullet points. I'm not like reading like a script or whatever. Okay, so let's start with your mom. Let's start with your mom growing up in a household with an unpredictable mother, and you learned how to read emotions. So when we grow up with emotional unpredictability, even if we know that there is love there, even if your mom wasn't overly cruel, or even if she wasn't cruel at all, your nervous system becomes exquisitely attuned to other people. So what does attunement mean? Like when we talk about attunement, it means mirroring, kind of, essentially. So think about when a toddler falls over and they hurt their knee and they're like, and they make the face, and attuning in that situation would be the mom getting down to their level and making the same face, being like, oh no, did you hurt yourself? Oh no. Or if that's attunement, being like, oh, I recognize your pain, and oh, it's paining me to see you in pain. That's attunement. And or it would be like the opposite. If your toddler shows you something that they did in school, like a finger painting or whatever, and they're like, look, mommy, look what I did. And then you go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like that's attunement, where you're like matching the energy. You're matching the energy to show the other person that you're like, I'm feeling this because of you. You've made me feel this way and we're feeling this together. You know what I mean? And when parents don't attune, so if you show your parent your finger painting and they're like, that's shit, and they don't attune to you, and they don't give you the eyebrows, and they don't raise their voice, and they don't show you how excited they are, that causes a lot of damage to kids. That does cause a lot of damage to kids. But anyway, it can go the opposite way around. When you have a parent who is emotionally unpredictable, you could end up reading them and attuning to them. It should be the other way around, obviously, but sometimes with emotionally unavailable parents, unfortunately, it can be flipped, and you become the one attuning to them, and you become the one scanning for little micro kind of expressions and changes in tone, changes in energy, and then you have to mirror that in order to like not rock the boat, or in order to like stay silent, or not annoy anyone, not step on anyone's toes. Do you know what I mean? So you learn how to read moods, read energy. You learn how to sense tone shifts and potential energy tension in the air. And you become very, 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 very good at adjusting yourself to try and keep things steady. So this is a very clever thing that our bodies are doing. It might make us feel like we're really fucked up, and it might make us feel like we're just on autopilot and we don't even know who we are, but actually, like, this is our body's way. It's a very, very intelligent program that our body is running to actually keep us safe, and it's a way of our bodies trying to find safety through appeasement, because we can't run away, we can't fight, we're frozen, and then we resort to fawning. And we want to keep these people happy so that they don't take out their aggression or their dysregulation on us. I'm not at all trying to say that your mom would hit you, or that your mom would like hurt you or anything, but even emotional safety, mental safety, psychological safety. Do you know what I mean? That safety matters too, not just like physical safety. So here are some examples of what fawning looks like in real life. It might not be the exact situation that I've described about the listener who sent in this email. Maybe your situation is completely different, but you still could be a fawn in like other situations. So here are some real life examples of what fawning might look like for you. Overthinking social interactions. So that could be overthinking them before they happen. Rehearsing like conversations in your head, planning what you're going to say if someone asks you this or that or whatever. It could be overthinking social interactions after they happened as well, like worrying if you said or did the right thing or the wrong thing, wondering if someone is mad at you for something that you might have said, thinking that people hate you, that kind of thing as well. And not being able to trust your own decisions. That's a really big one. Hooking up with people who you actually don't even fancy, or you don't even want to hook up with, just because you can't say no and you don't want to disappoint them. So sexual fawning is really like that. It's so major. And especially like, I don't know. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to talk too much about my own situations or whatever, but like getting with people and hooking up with people and just to appease them. And also, have you learned somewhere along the way that you literally can't say no? Like, you actually can't say no. Your no will not be respected. Your no will not be honored. Your no will not be listened to at all. So you just give in and you just appease this person to keep yourself safe. And again, abandoning yourself, betraying yourself in order to like try and keep yourself safe. It's like, it's really fucked up. Like, it is actually super fucked up, but we're not fucked up for doing it. Do you know what I mean? It is our body trying to keep us safe, and it is very intelligent. And we'll talk about that more later. Anyway, so laughing or smiling, even if someone is making you very uncomfortable, having difficulty saying no, overextending to prove our worth, codependency. If this person is happy, then I'm fine. As long as they're happy, then I'll be fine. I'll figure it out for myself. Loss of identity in relationships, which is definitely applicable to the person who sent in the email. Being overly agreeable, over committing to things when we really don't have the time, space, or energy to do it. Prioritizing other people's comfort over our own and over our own well-being. Feeling guilty for having needs. Pushing through exhaustion, being terrified of disappointing people, feeling responsible for other people's emotions. This is called emotional caretaking. A fear of being seen as difficult, trying to present a perfect image, not wanting to be seen as being messy or human or imperfect in any way, excessive apologizing. Let's see, chronic self-abandonment, obviously that comes with all of this, inability to identify or verbalize our own needs, anticipating and trying to solve problems before they even arise, repeatedly forgiving people who refuse to change. You could have held my hand. Not knowing our preferences, opinions, tastes, or interests. Boundaryless, no boundaries whatsoever. Not speaking up for ourselves. Not just people pleasing on a surface level of like wanting to keep everyone happy, but like shaping ourselves, personality, reactions, preferences around what keeps connection stable and safe. It isn't even stable and safe. It's just like perceived as stable and safe. But anyway, we will get to that. So that is just a few examples of what fawning actually looks like in real life, and a few just descriptions of examples of how the fawn shows up. And it might be different for everyone. And even if you just like, I'm not trying to say if you have one or two of these things that I've just read out, that means that you are a chronic fawn and you need to like go do loads of therapy or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. We all display these tendencies once in a while or every now and then or whatever. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with us. Even if you have all of these, it literally doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means that your body is incredibly clever and it's been keeping you safe, and it has kept you safe because you're here. You're listening to this podcast. So you're obviously safe somewhere, alive, happy. You made it through whatever the thing was that made you resort to these systems in the first place. And our bodies are very clever and they kept us safe, but maybe it's time to do something else. Maybe we don't need these safety tactics anymore. Maybe we don't need to be so hypervigilant, and we don't need to be so appeasing. And maybe it is completely safe for us to say no. Maybe it's completely safe for us to prioritize ourselves. So when this happens in childhood, before we even have the chance to form a solid sense of ourself, something very, very, very specific can happen. And it isn't just about being considerate or being empathetic and wanting to like make sure everyone else is okay. Like, that's normal. Those are good things. It's really good to be considerate. It's really good to not be a selfish bitch all the time and always put yourself first and not give a fuck about what anyone else thinks. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But there's a difference between being empathetic, being considerate, and wanting other people to be okay, and then or organizing your entire identity around other people and never thinking about yourself at all. Those are two completely different things. And this is when it goes from just being a kind, considerate, thoughtful person into being like an actual fawn, you know? So just because you're a nice person and you want everyone to be happy and you want to do your best and you want to be helpful and you want to be considerate of other people, that does not mean that you're like a chronic fawn in any way, shape, or form. So when we're, especially from childhood, when we're so used to appeasing everyone else and letting everyone else choose things and just going along with everything and just never wanting to be difficult, never wanting to rock the boat, never wanting to be seen as a nuisance or whatever, we never really get to like figure out who we really are and what we really like and what we actually think, because we're just so used to like taking a step back and just like nodding and agreeing and just like going along with it, or like vibe checking first and then just like adjusting ourselves to suit the temperature of what everyone else is doing, if that makes sense. So when someone does ask, what do we want? What do we think? What do you want to eat? What do you want to watch? When we're giving these options, it can feel really like, I don't know. What do you want? I don't want to pick the wrong thing in case you hate me because you wanted this other thing, but I said this thing, but actually I don't care because it's just whatever you think, whatever you want. But when we do feel like that, it doesn't mean that there is not a self in there. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean that we actually don't know what we want and we actually don't know who we are. That's not what that means at all. It is just, and it feels like this big space. I think she described it in the email that there's just this like vast space of where a self should be. But that it's not empty. It's not empty. It's just trained from such a young age to just be quiet and to kind of like shove it back. And that empty or perceived empty space that where the self should be, it's just space for us to discover like who we actually are. And it's space and time for us to like step into and fill with our preferences, our opinions, our thoughts, our interests, and all that kind of stuff that we never really got a chance to explore in the past. So this empty space where the self should be, it basically is just evidence that we learned very early on that our preferences were not the priority, that stability was, connection was, emotional safety was the priority, not what we wanted, what we thought, what we desired, what we needed. That was not the priority whatsoever. And especially if that goes on since childhood, it can feel like this massive empty space where like we're not there. Where are we? We're not there. It doesn't mean that we lost ourselves or that ourself isn't there. It just means that we were so focused on orienting outwards that we never actually fully got to orient inwards into ourselves. It just means that we never actually got the chance to fully explore what we like, what we think, what we enjoy, what we prefer, separately to the people who we were appeasing at the time, or the people that we're continuing to appease. We never separated those things. What they want, what I want, what they like, what I like, what they prefer, what I prefer. We never got to actually explore what we like separate to the people who we were or are appeasing. But that space that might feel really empty, that space that might feel really vast and hollow because it feels like there's no personality there. It feels like there's no likes or interests or hobbies or whatever. That might feel really huge, but actually it's a space for us to discover and explore like who we actually are. So it is a good thing. I know it feels probably very daunting to like open up the door and see that empty space and be like, where am I? Where is she? But actually it's a really good thing, because that's like this endless space for us to like fill in with all the things that make us who we are, and we get to explore that and we get to discover that. From a somatic perspective, that is basically someone who became hyper attuned to external things, external cues, other people's moods, other people's reactions, other people's desires, other people's needs, and slightly disconnected from our internal ones. But again, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. Like, our bodies did that to keep us safe. Our bodies needed to do that at the time to keep us safe. And it worked. It worked. But do we need to do that now? Or can we learn something new? And also, I just wanted to talk about what you said there about feeling guilty when your mum is upset, even when you know that you've done nothing wrong. And again, it's this like letting people be uncomfortable, like that emotional caretaking, taking on the responsibility for like other people's emotions. It does make sense too. Like when you grow up managing someone's emotional world or feeling really responsible for their feelings and their regulation or dysregulation or whatever, their discomfort or distress or dysregulation can feel like a signal that you have done something wrong, that it is your fault even when you haven't, because your internal wiring, your internal system, your nervous system learned that if they are okay, then I am okay. If they are not okay, something could be wrong and it's probably my fault. And that wiring, that system setting or whatever, it doesn't just shut off now that you've grown up. Even if you've moved out and you're away from her and you don't live with her and you don't see her every day, like that internal system setting doesn't just switch off. Do you know what I mean? It still lives in the body and it will show up until we learn to unfawn and go the opposite way, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, I'm not just gonna talk forever. Like, we are gonna get into some like actual like ways to help as well. So there is a disconnect that happens when we fawn, when we actually say yes to something that we want to say no to, when we allow something, when we tolerate something, when we agree to something, even if our body is saying no and we are kind of ignoring those signals that our body is saying no. So say, for example, this is where the freeze and fawn come in. When there's an unexpressed boundary or unexpressed need or unexpressed no, then the fawn, that would be a freeze. The freeze would be, I feel constricted. Someone asked me to do something. I'll just use the example of what happened to me in the gym. So I immediately felt a freeze. Like the constriction in my body. I felt really triggered. I felt really dysregulated. And that was a boundary that I didn't listen to. That was my body saying, say no, stand up for yourself, say no. And because I didn't do that, I then resorted to fawning, which is smiling, laughing, ha ha ha, appeasing. So that's what happened. So if someone is asking you to do something, or if someone is doing something that's making you feel uncomfortable and you feel the constriction, you feel the trigger, you feel the anger, maybe you feel clenched, maybe you feel really uncomfortable or triggered or whatever it is, that is the freeze kind of action happening a little bit. And because we're not expressing a boundary, and then how we behave then would be the fawn of being like, yeah, of course I'll do that. Yeah, that's fine. Yes, agreeing, going along with everything, being chill, being super easy, people pleasing, whatever. That would be the fawn. This creates like a fracture in how we trust ourselves. If your body is sending you these signals, like, I'm not happy to do this, I don't want to do this, I'm uncomfortable, I'm not happy at all. And if we don't, if we just say yes, or if we don't stand up for ourselves, that creates a fracture, and we're betraying ourselves, we're abandoning ourselves. We're learning over time that we can't actually trust ourselves because we're not actually listening to our body, and we're not actually going to protect it. We're not actually saying no to the things that we should be saying no to. We're putting ourselves repeatedly in these situations. Do you know what I mean? But again, we can fix that. We can actually fix that. And that was why I wanted to talk about what happened to me in the gym, because I took one big step towards telling my body, you can trust me, I'm going to take you out of those situations. If I ever find myself in those situations, I'll stand up for you. So it's, again, this like taking these steps towards like building back that self-trust, which is really important, obviously. You spoke about your relationship ending, and how you mirrored this person's interests and hobbies, and when you broke up, you're realizing, or you're kind of feeling this empty space again. And I just wanted to reframe that empty space just a little bit, because I don't feel like it's an empty space. It's not like tumbleweeds and crickets. Do you know what I mean? I think this is the first time you've ever been able to stand in this empty space and ask, like, what do I want to put in here? You know what I mean? It's like buying a new apartment and all the walls are white and there's no furniture. And before, you lived in someone else's house and it was horribly decorated and you hated it, and you were like, oh my God, if I ever get my own place, I'm going to actually be able to decorate it how I like, to my own taste, and I'm going to get to discover what wallpaper I want, what flower arrangements I want, what bed sheets I want, what color I want to paint the floor or whatever, I don't know, paint floors, I don't know, whatever, what lamps I'm going to put everywhere, like what lighting I want. Like, you get to decide everything. So instead of viewing it as this empty space, this void of nothingness, this void that's just like empty of anything, it's just a blank canvas essentially, and you for the first time are actually being able to ask yourself, like, what do I want to fill in? Like, what do I want to put in on these walls? What do I want to put in, like, this space? Like, what do I actually want? And it's the first time you've been probably able to like prioritize yourself in a way, and it probably feels very jarring, and it probably feels very scary, and it's probably going to be important for you to like always, it's probably at this time, it's probably going to be important for you to not fall back into a fawning tendency if you get into another relationship, or maybe with someone at work or whatever, or in another situation. It doesn't have to be like in a relationship, but this is now the perfect time for you to kind of like come home to yourself. And coming home to yourself is not this like dramatic thing. It isn't this like cinematic, explosive, like, overnight kind of thing. It's like small actions repeated, consistently showing yourself what safety means, consistently showing yourself, that you're prioritizing yourself and that you're choosing what you want to choose because you want it. Consistently choosing yourself, consistently saying no to the things you want to say no to, consistently saying yes to the things you want to say yes to. And one of the things I forgot to mention is, actually no, I'll get to that in a minute. We're going to talk a little bit now about how to actually unfawn, and how to step away from our fawn, and a few little exercises here that we can do. A little bit of somatic experiencing, a little bit of somatic trauma therapy going on over here, okay? So the first thing I want to say is that you cannot think your way out of a nervous system response. So everything I've just said in the last like 45 minutes or whatever has been talking, it's been learning, it's been cognitive, it's been all me just like giving out information, giving out examples, blah, 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 blah. But actually, we have to live the experience and feel the experience of being safe and choosing ourselves. And so you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can listen to this on repeat, you can take notes, you can like blah, 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 blah. You can do all of that stuff, but you also have to bring your body into it and actually feel the sensation of the discomfort of saying no. There was no point in me learning about boundaries, learning all the like nervous system things and listening to podcasts, but not actually saying, you don't need to kiss me, you don't need to kiss me. Like that action of bringing my body into it, that action of like no, was me teaching my body that I'm safe, and was me teaching my body like, if you're in these situations, I'm going to stand up for you. So you actually have to like bring the mind into it and also bring the body into it. The two things are connected anyway, so like whatever. I think a lot of people like to think that the mind and the body are two completely separate systems, and they're kind of not, but whatever. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes the therapy is too much up here, I think. But anyway, I like both, obviously. But anyway, so what we have to think about it, what we have to think, I was like, just stop thinking. And now I'm like, what we need to think. We have to give the body new experiences. That's what we need to do, slowly, gently, in tiny doses, just drip feeding these little moments of safety, these little moments of, I'm choosing you, I'm prioritizing you, you're number one. And that can happen repeatedly over time. Like, think about when we go to the gym. We don't go to the gym once and then we're like, well, I've been to the gym, that's it now, I've got my perfect body, I'm healthy as fuck, I'll be healthy forever. No, it's kind of like a habit. You kind of go all the time. You drip, 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 drip. You don't go to the gym for 10 hours one day and then you don't go for another month. You go for half an hour, 3 days a week, or you go for an hour, like 2 days a week or 3 days, whatever it is. You just kind of like drip it in. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of the same thing with these moments of safety, these moments of prioritizing ourselves, these moments of learning how to say no, using these opportunities when someone comes and hugs us and kisses us, using that as an opportunity to be like, hell no. And just teaching our bodies that we will prioritize it and that we're always going to stand up for it. And again, this doesn't happen overnight and it isn't going to be perfect. And when we think about a fawn, the fawn muscle, if we have been flexing this fawn muscle since childhood, that muscle is going to be quite big, and that muscle it's going to overcompensate. So even if we wanted to use another muscle, such as a boundary muscle or a standing up for ourselves muscle, or saying no muscle, or expressing our true feelings muscle, or letting people be disappointed in us sometimes muscle. That muscle is going to be quite weak because we're not used to flexing it. And this really strong fawn muscle is probably going to take over because it's so big and thick and developed, and there's a vein sticking out of it. And we kind of have to intentionally let that arm or let that muscle like just stop. You know what I mean? We need to let that muscle stop, almost as if we're like injecting it with Botox so it can't move. Just let that muscle, inject that muscle with like energetic Botox, and actively work the other muscle, actively work the muscle that expresses boundaries, actively work the muscle. This is like the counter. We're countering the fawn. So if this muscle is our vortex, then the muscle over here, the boundary muscle, the saying no muscle, the letting people be disappointed and uncomfortable muscle, this is the counter action, what we need to do intentionally. And again, it isn't going to be perfect every single time. It is like we're going to mess up sometimes, and this muscle is still huge, even if we're aware of it, even if we're noticing that it's really big and it kind of takes over, it's still probably going to take over sometimes. And that's okay. And when it does take over sometimes, when we do fawn or we fall back into fawning tendencies or whatever, not to be like, I'm such a piece of shit, I'm such a fawn, I'm so fucked up, I'm never going to get better. Just be like, no, this is deeply, deeply ingrained in my nervous system. This is deeply ingrained in my subconscious, and it isn't going to go away overnight. It isn't. But what I can do is reduce the amount that I'm using this, and intentionally, slowly over time, increase the amount that I'm doing with this. So if you think about it, like even just, sorry, I keep using gym analogies. I'm such a gym bro, but whatever. So if you've been using this muscle forever, you could probably lift like 50 kilos, 100 kilos, not a bother, because you're so used to like this muscle being so big and strong, and you've never really used this muscle. You're you're saying no, your boundary muscle. You're not used to using that. You probably can only pick up 2 kilos. You're not going to do massive heavy lifting all in one go. You have to like build it up over time. Do you know what I mean? So it's like small drip feeding it in these tiny little moments of proving to ourselves and showing ourselves that we're actually learning something new. This muscle kept me strong for a really long time, and it did its job. And now I'm fine. So thank you. But I'm going to try this one now. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try putting up boundaries. I'm going to try saying no. I'm going to try putting myself first a little bit, and I'm going to try standing up for myself, because I don't need this huge big muscle. I need to like balance it out somehow. So another exercise I wanted to talk about was preferences, learning what our preferences are. So when we think about this huge void of this empty space, this fresh apartment with white walls, no furniture, completely unfurnished, and we walk into it and we get to decide, like, that feels really daunting. That feels really, really, really daunting to be like, what do I actually want? What do I actually like? Who am I? What are my opinions? What are my tastes? I would say practice preferences. Okay, so it's kind of like, instead of saying, what do I want to do today, or what do I want to eat today, just be like, do I want tea or coffee? Give yourself like 2 options. Do I want tea? Do I want coffee? Do I want peppermint tea, or do I want a raspberry leaf tea? You know what I mean? Like, give yourself options, give yourself preferences. Do I want to listen to a podcast, or do I want to listen to a song while I'm driving in my car? Do I want to go to the gym, or do I want to walk in the mountains? Do I want to do this, or do I want to do that? So giving ourselves, like, kind of containing it a little bit, because like this empty space where we should be and we're not there, and we don't know where we are, we're just like lost in this like vast infinite kind of void, and that's too big to try and figure out. Like, how do we fill this void with ourselves? How do we fill this void with our preferences, with our likes, with our tastes, with our desires, with our needs, with our boundaries? Blah, 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 blah. That's just too much. It's just way too much. So start small with preferences. What do I want to read my book, or do I want to watch Netflix? And then just affirming, like, I do know what I want. I do know what I want for dinner. I do know what I like to eat. Do I want a burger, or do I want pizza? Literally, it gets to be that easy. Like, just start at that such small level. Buying yourself flowers. Do I want the pink ones? Do I want the white ones? Maybe I want both. That's also a perfect answer. And starting at such a small level of just like these micro decisions, these micro preferences that will eventually, we will just fortify and reaffirm to ourselves that like, I do know what I prefer, I do know what I like, and kind of taking it from there without needing to explain ourselves, without needing to justify our decision. Just like, do I want to read this book or do I want to read a magazine? Do I want to go for a walk? Do I want to watch Netflix? Do I want to see my friend or do I want to have a date to myself? Do I want to do whatever it is? And then just let yourself pick. Be like, actually, this is what I want to do. This is what I like. Do I prefer this movie? Do I prefer that movie? Actually, I prefer that movie. Do you know what I mean? Let it start be that easy. Like, let it be easy. So another exercise that I would recommend to do would be to find your edge, to find your container, your physical body container. When we become really fawny, it kind of gets hard to distinguish where we end and where another person begin, because we feel like we're so entangled with other people. We're so entangled with their decisions, what they like, what their opinions are, what their desires or needs or preferences are, that it's actually kind of hard to distinguish, like, well, who am I? Where am I? Like, where am I in all of this? So actually figuring out where we are and finding a container for our body. So I'll give you 2 things to do, physical things to do. Container hug. I'm gonna do, you took one of your hands underneath your armpit, like side boob armpit area, and then you clamp your arm down, and then your other hand, you're gonna reach it across and grab the back of your opposite arm, and you kind of squeeze yourself. You don't want to hurt yourself, but you do kind of squeeze yourself a little bit and kind of pull in. So pull your fingers towards each other so that you can feel the container of your body. You can let yourself sway. You can close your eyes while you're doing this. This is a really, really good practice for, this is my body. This is where I begin. This is where I end. These are the limits of my body. These are the parameters. These are the boundaries, the physical boundaries of my body. This is the map of my body. You can put both of your hands underneath if you want to. You can change it around if you want to. But a container hug I would definitely recommend. Another thing I would recommend is also finding your edge using like a havening kind of technique, where you will bring a little bit of pleasure into your body, bring a little bit of tickly kind of dopamine into your body as well. So I'll just show you what havening kind of technique would be, where you really, really, really lightly start touching your skin, really lightly, maybe just starting at the hand, at the fingers, and holding it there, just kind of going around, just to bring a little bit of sensation to the skin, just to bring a little bit of like, ooh, that feels nice. You know what I mean? That feels nice. And this is trying to find the outline of our body, trying to be like, this is my body. This is where my arm is. This is where my hand is. Maybe on our face, this is where my face is. And kind of just helps us to contain ourselves a little bit. So I'm here and that person is over there. That person might be in a different country. That person might be in a different room. That person might be somewhere not near me at all anymore. I'm not attached to them. I'm here. This is my body. This is the container of my body. And this is what I'm responsible for. I'm responsible for looking after this. I'm responsible for this person, not all these other people. And again, I'm not trying to say that it's a bad thing to like be considerate, and want to like help people and want to be useful or want to be empathetic and like be helpful or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But if it turns to chronic fawning, then you are helping other people at the expense of yourself, and you're not even helping them because you're not even being very honest either. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be like, we're all liars, fawns are liars. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it isn't actually helping them. So for example, what happened to me in the gym, if I didn't stand up for myself and that guy just kept doing that, he thought it was completely okay to just do that to women all the time, and he kept doing it to like other women, then he's never going to learn that you can't do that. And then potentially other women he would do that to other women. Do you know what I mean? So no. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I think that's all I have for you today. Let me know if I contained myself a little bit better, and if you prefer when I'm being a little bit spacey and unhinged, or do you prefer when I have I think I prefer when I have the document. I think I kind of annoy myself too much when I'm just like bleh. And as much as I love an unfiltered and an unhinged rant and yap, don't get me wrong, but at the same time I kind of feel like this is a little bit easier to listen to, and it's probably a little bit more like you can keep up with me, because sometimes I can't even keep up with myself, and it's a little bit more cohesive, and like it probably flows a little bit better. But anyway, maybe not, maybe it was an absolute disaster. Maybe when I'm editing it I'll be like, there was no difference. But anyway, I'm gonna go. Thank you for being here. I will be back next week, and I will have a video on my main channel next week about the beauty standards and how when women are given power the beauty standards will change, and also the crazy, insane, toxic diet culture of the early 2000s. So I look forward to seeing you then. And again, if you want me to answer a question related to anything, relationships, nervous system, somatic work, trauma, healing, joy, positivity, goal setting, anything, if you want me to answer your question, you can email me at girlbonespodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you on the next one.